Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Sabrina Kofer, and on behalf of Choice and ACRL, I'd like to welcome you to today's program, Nature Reviews, Engineering Research for Real-World Challenges, which is sponsored by Springer Nature. This session is one in a series of sponsored webinars from Choice and ACRL that address, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. The water went down the wrong way. This session is one in a series of sponsored webinars from Choice and ACRL that addresses new ideas and developments of interest to the academic library community. Now I'll just put some links in the chat where you can register for upcoming Choice webinars or watch previous webinar recordings. Before we get started, I'd like to point out just a few features of the webinar software. All attendees who join the presentation are automatically muted and your cameras are off, so don't worry about generating any noise or feedback. We've got that taken care of for you. In the main area of the screen, you can follow along with the presentation materials. To adjust the size of the slides or video, you can use the divider in the middle of the screen to slide the sizes to your liking. We are using the Q&A feature today. Please use it to ask questions of our speakers or to share any comments. We'll answer as many questions as we have time for at the end of the presentation, so please do type your questions into the Q&A module as they occur to you. You can also use the upvote feature to highlight questions you like or would like to be addressed. Also, there's closed captioning available for today's session. To toggle the automated captions on or off, please use the CC button on the bottom panel of your screen. Last, please note that we are recording today's program and everyone who registered should receive a follow-up email with a link to the archive version and where to access today's slides. And with that, we're ready to get started, so I will hand it over to Mina.
Thank you so much, Sabrina. So I'll just give you a quick overview of today's speakers. So I'm Mina Razak. I'm the editorial director for Nature Reviews, and I'll be joined by Christine Horesh, who's the chief editor of Nature Reviews Bioengineering, and Olga Bubnova from Nature Reviews Electrical Engineering. I'll give you a little bit of an overview of our portfolio and our publishing ethos, and then I'll hand over to each of the chief editors to tell you a little bit about their journals. So Nature Reviews launched 25 years ago with Nature Reviews Genetics, Nature Reviews Neuroscience, and Nature Reviews Molecular Cell Biology. In 2009, we rebranded the Nature Clinical Practice titles to be Nature Reviews journals. Since 2015, we've been launching new titles, including into the physical sciences space. In 2023, we stepped firmly into the engineering space with the launch of Nature Reviews Bioengineering, and in 2024 with Nature Reviews Electrical Engineering, which are the topics of today's webinar. So you've just seen a couple of poll questions where we're asking whether you were aware that we published engineering content and whether you'd heard of two of these launches. I'm really interested to see your answers. In 2025, we launched Nature Reviews Clean Technology and Nature Reviews Biodiversity. So the journal portfolio offers content across all of the research space, including the social sciences, which I hadn't specifically called out with Nature Reviews Psychology. Let's take a look at the poll results. Oh, good. Well, hopefully that means you're going to learn something today. So move on to the next slide. So a question I'm often asked is, what's the difference between a Nature research journal and a Nature Reviews journal? It's true, the Nature research journals, such as Nature Chemistry, Nature Biotech, they do publish reviews, news, and opinion, but it's a small proportion of their content. They mainly focus on publishing original research articles. By contrast, Nature Reviews publish exclusively reviews, news, and opinion content. So what makes a really good review? A good review is more than just a list of the latest findings on a topic. While it's true, a good review should include that data and those findings, a Nature Reviews review is going to put those findings into context. So our expert authors really are challenged with looking at the state of the field and answering a very important question that we pose to them. What are the implications of these findings? What does it all mean? And it's that context that sets us apart. I think we're doing a pretty good job. So in 2022, a reader survey showed that the Nature Reviews content saves readers time in understanding broad and related research topics, serve as a gateway into new research areas outside of the reader's understanding, and enables the readers, to explain complex topics to non-specialists and students. So review articles are an essential resource in a scientific literature landscape that's always expanding. New research papers are published in multitude every day, and it's very challenging to stay up to date. And this is where we come in. The Nature Reviews portfolio packs a punch, as well as covering quite a range of research areas. There's quite a few things that sets us apart. I'll get into the high editorial and production values on the next slide, but our authors work with in-house editors in a very collaborative way. And in doing so, they're pretty happy with the results. So we've had consistently high positive author feedback that they really enjoy the rigor that our editors put them through, the support that the editors provide, and the overall product that is produced at the end of that collaboration, each individual article. Readers like our content. More than 40% of our content, of our reviews content, are in the top 1% cited in their category. And all of our journals with an impact factor are in the first quartile of their journal rankings. As well as reaching the traditional academic readership space, our content is increasingly used in what we call the gray literature. So this is governmental agencies, policy documents, think tanks, etc. One of our goals is to have content that's societally and globally relevant. So it's really wonderful to see that we are achieving this goal with this type of citation. So all of our articles receive a high level of editorial input to ensure that the articles are of the highest quality. Editors research and decide on the most interesting topics to cover. They hand select the authors that they want to work with to deliver those articles, and they guide them through the publication process. The aim of our articles are to be broad, impactful, clear, and accessible. And these high editorial values are not really substantiated by any of our competitors. We have a dedicated art team that develops new figures with the editors and the authors, and we can turn sometimes unruly sketches like the one you see on this slide into a visually impactful, scientifically accurate diagram. So our ethos is we're quite mission-led journals. Every journal has a mission, and as a group, we have a mission. And one of those is that we are inclusive and diverse, because that's good for science and good for storytelling. So what do I mean by that? As well as covering a wide range of topics, we think very carefully about publishing things that are societally relevant, and we think about the way we train our editors. For example, we have sensitivity style guides, inclusive language education for our editors. We regularly meet as a team of editors to reaffirm our mission and our methods and how we tell our stories. And we also have targets and objectives to improve our editorial training and to reaffirm those objectives. In terms of our commissioning strategy, we think very carefully about who, what, and why we publish. And we are really striving to cover globally relevant and socially relevant topics, be that thinking about the Sustainable Development Goals or the state of research as a workplace, the inclusion of women, the inclusion of early career researchers in the scientific story. And we also think about the pieces that we use, the formats that we use. Because we're very interested in expanding the author pool, we want to bring in more earlier career researchers to our pages. They may not necessarily be ready to write a full review. And so we've designed shorter formats that we can work on with these earlier career researchers, introducing them to the publishing landscape, introducing them to working with professional editors, and introducing them to the high impact research space. We've also integrated our mission into everything that we do, and that includes thinking about the display items, making sure they're accessible, how we use social media to share the message, things like that. And we've also got some additional little offerings that we think are important for our global audience and collaborators. For example, if your name can be written in non-Roman characters because you're, for example, from China or Japan or the Middle East, we can now support you publishing your name in your language. It's a small offering, but it's a meaningful one that shows that we care about our communities, and the authors are really pleased that we can offer this. So all of this leads us to the main topic of today's webinar. Nature Reviews is engineering content. As you all know, engineering is the practical manifestation of scientific discoveries into real-world applications to solve problems. Those problems we're particularly passionate about are those covered by, as I mentioned before, the Sustainable Development Goals, such as ensuring good health and well-being, eliminating hunger, and the climate crisis. Over 1/3 of our journals in the Nature portfolio publish engineering content, and this is the added feature. And this content has the added feature of being able to bring together researchers from academia and industry, again, supporting our mission to be as inclusive of the research space as we can. Given our interest in expanding the author pool, this interest, it makes perfect sense for us to have been growing into engineering content. So now I'll hand over to Christine, who will speak to you about Nature Reviews Bioengineering, our first wholly engineering journal. And following her, Olga will take over. So Christine.
Thank you so much, Mina. Hello, everybody. My name is Christine. I'm the chief editor of Nature Reviews Bioengineering, a journal that we have launched in 2023. At Nature Reviews Bioengineering, we publish authoritative, accessible, and agenda-setting reviews, perspectives, comments, and down-to-business articles that cover the full breadth of bioengineering. So our articles discuss the application of engineering principles and biological knowledge to engineer tools, materials, and devices that can mimic, modify, or control biology. Importantly, we have a very strong focus on application, translation, and technology transfer, because after all, engineers are solutionists. So they want to get their innovations, their systems out of the lab and into the world to actually address real-world problems. So our articles also discuss considerations with regards to product development, technology transfer, funding, policy making, regulatory approval, and intellectual property. Our scope is very broad and covers biomedical engineering, environmental engineering and biotechnology, as well as design and fabrication of devices and technology. Biomedical engineering, that is bioengineering with preclinical or clinical relevance, includes a variety of areas such as tissue and cell engineering, the design of artificial organs, the engineering of medical devices and implants, but also delivery technologies such as vaccines and immunoengineering approaches, in addition to the use of biomaterials in engineering and the design of in vitro models to investigate human biology and human disease. In terms of environmental engineering and biotechnology, we cover a variety of areas as well, including synthetic biology, metabolic engineering, protein engineering, but also food engineering and plant and crop biotechnology. Finally, we have a strong focus on the design and fabrication of actual devices and technology. For example, biosensors and wearable devices, which play an important role in digital health and personalized medicine, but also robotics, bionics, and assistive technologies, bioimaging, and the fabrication and manufacturing of all these devices, for example, through 3D printing. We also cover the integration of these devices into actual clinical workflows. And of course, artificial intelligence and computational approaches also play an increasingly huge role in our field. So this is covered by our journal as well. So from our scope, our journal is really at the forefront of engineering research that addresses key elements of the Sustainable Development Goals, including health and well-being, food security, and climate action. Another focus we have at the journal is frugal engineering. That concerns the design of devices that are based on low cost and local materials and resources to really be able to be manufactured and used where they are needed the most. Therefore, many of our authors discuss low resource considerations in their articles. That is, how their systems and innovation can function in regions with resource limited settings. For example, limited or unreliable electricity supply or limited cold chains, which is especially important for medicines and vaccines, but also limited healthcare facilities or personnel. In addition, our authors often discuss regulatory considerations in their articles, which we believe is a very useful resource for our readers because the authors point them to the specific regulatory guidelines and approvals that they require for a specific device or system, and also the challenges that are related to obtaining regulatory approval for a bioengineered system. Clinical translation plays an important role, especially in biomedical engineering, because biomedical engineers usually have the goal to design something that will ultimately make an impact in the clinic and improve the life of patients. However, clinical translation is a very long, complex, and lengthy process. And unfortunately, many of the innovations that work very well in the laboratory setting do not make it into a clinical product. And this is due to a variety of reasons. And therefore, we commission articles from both clinical researchers and engineers together to discuss the clinical translation of bioengineered systems and tools. What are the challenges? How could this be overcome? What are the things to consider early in the design of your device or system to ensure that ultimately you're going to achieve approval and that ultimately your system will be used in the clinic? We also have a huge focus on global health related bioengineering because ultimately we want to address global problems with our articles. So we have co-organized a Nature conference in 2023 together with Vanderbilt University in Nashville on bioengineering for global health. And we were really trying to establish almost a new community with engineers, clinical researchers, people involved in global health implementation and global health related issues to discuss and understand how bioengineering can really improve global health. And since then, we've published a variety of articles and we continue publishing them on global health related topics. This is, for example, especially important in designing diagnostic devices. Many bioengineers make a lot of effort in designing cheap diagnostic devices that can function at the point of care, for example. Bioengineers also work on making important medical devices, such as imaging devices, MRI, for example, portable, and devices that require really low maintenance. In addition to engineering research, we also publish shorter comment type articles that discuss the societal considerations when it comes to global health. For example, how can these systems be actually implemented in different regions around the globe, and the importance of involving the local community and the local innovation and research facilities in in device design. In addition to these articles, we also publish something called Down to Business articles. In these articles, we highlight inspiring stories of spin-off companies that have navigated the challenges of translation. These articles are written by the inventors themselves, who are usually academics who co-founded a spin-off company. And they're pretty honest accounts of what it takes to get something from basic research, from an idea to an actual product. So they really reveal the triumphs, but also the hurdles of bringing ideas to life. The idea for these articles is to serve as guidelines and as inspiration for our readership interested in technology transfer and in translation. So the inventors usually share their success stories, but also their failures. So with the idea that others can benefit and learn from their experiences. We also promote early career researchers in our journal. For example, we've launched a competition called the Ultimate Bioengineering Challenge last year, that, asking students and postdocs around the globe to theoretically tackle some of the most pressing bioengineering challenges with regards to global health. In this case, we asked them to solve the following challenges: an off-grid bio-based cooling technology for short-term cold storage. This is particularly important for vaccine distribution. An edible vaccine in a low-maintenance plant, which really should make vaccines more accessible around the globe, and a self-sustained oxygen mask. Oxygen masks are life-saving medical devices, but they usually require external medical oxygen, which is not available in many regions around the world. And we got submissions from teams of students and postdocs from more than 15 countries. And with the help of our external referees, we picked one winning innovative idea for each challenge. And we will publish this together with an editorial in our April issue. And it was very encouraging because the ideas that we received were very creative, very innovative, and really hope we can showcase this in our journal. So to identify the topics, the experts, and the areas that our community, our readership is interested in, we do a lot of outreach around the globe, both virtually and in person. We visit universities and laboratories, we talk to researchers, we attend conferences to really identify what are the key areas that our community cares about and that we would like to cover in our journal. And I'm very happy to say that this is also reflected in the global distribution of our authorship, as you can see here on the right graph. In our first 2 years, we published a lot of different areas, which is shown here on the left, on very different aspects of bioengineering, biomedical engineering, but also food engineering, synthetic biology, environmental topics, always with this focus on translation. And I'm happy to say that this is also now reflected already in our citations and article downloads. So our community reads those papers and engages with the journal, which makes me very happy. Finally, I wanted to highlight also our collections and focus issues, which we've done a few over the past 2 years on a variety of topics together with other journals in our portfolio. Our collections focus on specific areas such as biofabrication, the clinical translation of newer technologies, bioengineering for global health, or the future of food. And we hope that these collections and focus issues are a useful resource for our readers to have all of the information, all the content on a specific topic across different Nature Research and Nature Reviews journals in one place. So this was a short introduction about the exciting things we're doing at Nature Reviews Bioengineering. And with that, I am going to hand over to Olga.
Okay, thank you very much. And I apologize for some noise outside. It's a school run time, so please forgive me for that. I'll try to speak really loud and clear. And so basically, we are moving now from bioengineering to electrical engineering because so many of you seem to not have heard about the journal. I wanted to make sure that we all understand why publishing electrical engineering research is so important and why we wanted to launch Nature Reviews Electrical Engineering, which I'm a chief editor of. So electrical engineering is maybe not the largest engineering community, one of the largest, but not the largest, but it's definitely one of the most dynamic and rapidly evolving fields. And in terms of its impact from the technological perspective, it's definitely the most impactful engineering community, engineering area. And you know that it drives a lot of innovation in AI, for example, which is going to be the most transformative technological revolution of all, I think. Semiconductors, telecommunications, power systems, consumer electronics, you name it. There are many, many examples where electrical engineering research is really making a lot of advancements. However, that means that with this expansion, there's also a lot of complexity and a lot of interdisciplinarity to it. So if you want to just have a very basic idea, it's 400 plus subfields that electrical engineering has. And the problem is that there is no experts in electrical engineering because the field is so big that you would be inevitably specialized in a very, very small kind of niche area. And that means that the communication between different subfields really need some serious translation, because obviously the science is complicated and all the technological concepts are very complicated. So we need to improve that type of communication between subfields. On top of it, we have another problem. Because it's an applied field, like any kind of engineering you can imagine, we're talking about not just research that is done in academia, but we're talking also about research which is done in industry. And academia and industry are two very, very separate worlds, and they do not really communicate that well. So again, we have a gap here. How do we make sure that electrical engineering field advances at the fastest possible pace without this very strong communication between industry and academia? So that is the gap that also needs to be bridged. And with these two ideas, basically improving the communication between different subfields of electrical engineering and also improving communication between industry and academia, that we launched our journal in 2024. So today we published our March issue. So it means that we've been we exist like for, 18 months now, and it's our 15th issue that is online today. This said, what we're trying to do with Nature Reviews Electrical Engineering is to provide some kind of a platform that would serve as basically communication platform for different types of actors in electrical engineering field: engineers, researchers, policymakers, even entrepreneurs, because we're also talking about translation of technologies, just like what Christine mentioned. And of course, we're trying to see how electrical engineering can address global challenges such as energy sustainability or climate change. But also we are very much interested in industrial applications, because we understand that a lot of innovation, like I already mentioned, happened in industry. And another important thing, I guess, about why Nature Reviews Electrical Engineering is that we are trying to adhere, of course, to the highest Nature standards, Nature Reviews tradition of high editorial standards, of inclusivity and accessible scientific language. So we are basically trying to act as a translator between these different subfields, and also as a bridge between industry and academia in that manner. So what we are doing really well, I think, is that we're trying to communicate very complex technological concepts to much, much broader audiences, and not just within electrical engineering, but even, across different disciplines like life sciences, environmental sciences, and so on. So that was the idea behind Nature Reviews Electrical Engineering. Now let's talk about the scope a little bit. So it is a huge area, like I said, 400 plus subfields, but we can roughly divide it into 6 major areas. It's electronics, power and energy, communication, so it's telecommunications, that's what I mean by it, photonics, control systems, which is robotics basically, and signal processing. They are very much intertwined. There's a lot of overlap between all of them, and it's difficult to kind of have a clear-cut division, but that's basically the best we can do to understand the field better. And every single area has a lot of subfields, as you can see, and this is just a very, very brief list of what each area can basically entail in terms of the research we publish. What we're trying to do, really, just to come back a little bit to our scope, is to have it as balanced as possible, so that we do not give too much kind of coverage to one area and completely neglect some other areas. So we're really trying to keep the balance as good as possible. I already mentioned that we pay a lot of attention to publishing industrial research. And why is that? Like I said, electrical engineering and a lot of innovations are happening within private sector, right? So industrial research is extremely important for us. Of course, the ideal situation would be to have some kind of a strong collaboration between academia and industry, and we see quite a lot of that type of collaborations. But Nature Reviews journals are very, very good starting point for publishing industrial research. And this is because industry has a very different approach to publishing, and some of the companies do not even want to publish at all. So basically, by providing them with the possibility of publishing shorter communications or reviews if they have time for that, without the necessity to kind of like disclose a lot of their very sensitive information, so that we do not really drive them for a full scientific transparency in that sense. They can still participate in publishing, but keep from disclosing the information that they find sensitive. As you can see, we hope by publishing this type of industrial research to help in driving technological innovation, enhancing collaboration between academia and industry. Also, it's quite a good way of spotting talent, for example, because companies are very often interested in reading research papers, for example, or reviews, or collaborating with academia as a potential pool for talent as well. So how do we do this kind of connection? How do we connect industry and academia practically? So far what we have been doing is kind of a twofold approach. First approach is in collaboration with Nature. We have organized two roundtable discussions with industry. That was last year, and that was semiconductor industry for now. We are going to do it with different type of industries in the future. But for now, what we've done, we had one roundtable in Shanghai with all the biggest semiconductor companies in China, such as SMIC, for example, or Huawei. And we also did one big roundtable with representatives of semiconductor industry from the rest of the world. That was at IEDM. It's the biggest conference in electronics, which happens every year in San Francisco. So we met with representatives from TSMC, Samsung, NVIDIA, IBM, Intel, and many, many more. And at these roundtables, we discussed the types of contributions that industry would be comfortable with. And basically, we're just trying to attract as many of these contributions as possible, of the highest quality, of course, because we have to remember that we are working for Nature Portfolio and we are very selective in terms of the research we publish. And another collaboration type we've had so far is long-term collaborations with IMEC and Cialetti. These are two very big companies in Europe that work with all the biggest global players in semiconductor industry and beyond, also in photonics, in power electronics, for example. So these companies are extremely good source of collaboration with industry, and we've been publishing shorter type of articles like Lab2Fab, which I will talk about in a second, and comments as well. So this kind of collaboration, it's monthly article that they supply to us and that we publish, which we find extremely useful for them and for us as well. So here's a little bit of preliminary information about our success in terms of balanced coverage of the scope. As you can see, we are struggling a little bit with telecom and robotics. And this is again because Nature Portfolio is not very familiar with these fields. And that's where my journal is really trying to make some difference by recruiting more papers and commissioning more papers in this field. And the only reason why we do not have that many contributions from the field is because it's traditionally they do not know how to publish Nature Portfolios. So we are re-educating them in a way, but we see a lot of progress there, and we know that we can do even more once we have had our conferences that are specifically dedicated to these fields, and I will mention about that on the next slide. So in terms of the authorship type, we, as you can see, have a lot of papers, obviously, from academia, because Nature Portfolio is, of course, very, very strong, and we pride ourselves in our very strong connection to academia. From industry perspective, there are very, very few papers that are 100% industry authored, but we have quite a lot of success in the space of hybrid collaboration, so basically industry academia authorship. And I think that this is ideal because it kind of gives industry the freedom of maybe spending a little bit less time writing things up, but also providing their input. And then, academic partners, they do most of the writing, but also they have this additional input from industry, which definitely makes a contribution much more valuable, in my opinion, especially for applied sciences and applied fields like engineering. So here are some examples. For example, we have published, this is a hybrid type, okay, of authorship. So one of them is a very nice review on power electronics for EV. And that was initiated by Foxconn. You know that Foxconn is very famous for being the main supplier for Apple, for example, but now they're sort of switching their profile and they are really redirecting their attention towards EV business. And this review, they saw it as a tool for signaling to academia and also to industrial partners of their newly found interest in EV. So this is a very well received review, and also it's written in collaboration with CTU in Hong Kong. The second one you see on the right here is the collaboration between Intel, UNIST, and Texas. And this one is also authored by an academia, representatives. Basically, the corresponding author is a professor, but there's a lot of input from the company engineers from Intel, which is also very nice because it provides this industrial perspective. Finally, I wanted to show you maybe not so much the left-hand side example, but mostly I want to talk about TSMC. That's a perspective that we've just published. Actually, it's in our March issue. It's been online for maybe slightly more than 2 weeks, and it has attracted a lot of attention. And the reason I wanted to mention this one is because it was written entirely by industry. So it's one of those rare examples of fully industrial kind of authorship papers. And this paper was really written in a way that TSMC was trying to provide very strong input and kind of send a very strong message to academia on what type of research and directions they would like academia to work. And this is done through using key points that we use in every perspective and review, just basically to summarize what type of directions TSMC thinks people working on advanced logic and electronics in academia, what types of directions they should pursue in order to create this collaboration with industry. So this is a very, very nice example, and we had a lot of positive feedback on this one, so I'm pretty proud of this one. We also publish Lab to Fabs. It's very similar to what Christine mentioned when she was talking about down to business. Lab to Fab, obviously, it comes from electronics. As you know, it's a very kind of common saying from Lab to Fab, and it's exactly what it means, right? It's about translation of different types of technologies. And in Lab to Fab pieces, we do exactly the same. We just talk about different aspects of technology translation, basically. And it can be, like Christine said, very positive, good example, success examples, but it also can be about failures. It can be about regulatory considerations, can be about IP, it can be about scaling up, laboratory demonstration to some marketable products. It can be about industry collaboration. Whatever it is, as long as it is about technology translation, that's basically what Lab to Fab is. Otherwise, it really looks like just a regular comment. But it really shows us how startups work, for example. Maybe it can be even some regional focus, for example, how it works in Korea versus how it works in the United States, or how it differs from one university to the next. So any kind of aspects of technology translation can be discussed in Lab to Fab pieces. Okay. Of course, as a new launch, we had to do a lot of outreach because not many people know about us. And when you launch a new journal, you have a lot of field to cover. So last year, and I think this year will be no exception as well, we've done a lot of outreach. Again, similar to what Christine's team does, we do lab visits in person, we do a lot of conferences. We do some seminars, we do virtual lab visits, and this is something that I like the most because in the COVID times, we learned how to do things virtually, and sometimes it can be extremely beneficial because discussing for 20, 30 minutes can really result in a long-term collaboration. And it's also very, very nice to just see people in front of you, even if you're not physically with them. Like I said, we have delivered 2 roundtables. We are planning to do many more in the future. We also have been involved in a number of master classes and H conferences this year, and we're organizing also many more for the next year. And we are involved in 2 H conferences on electronics this year. So we've been pretty much everywhere in the world, but you can still see that the map is not fully covered with these blue spots. So we have a lot more to uncover, but you can imagine that we're going to the places where we have the best chances of recruiting the best papers. So it's mostly the United States, Asia, China, Japan, and Europe. That's pretty much the hotspots on the map. So, like I already mentioned, there are some fields of electrical engineering that have been at least partially covered in H portfolio, for example, electronics, photonics, but some have not been really touched at all. So telecom and robotics are very good examples of that. And these are notoriously difficult fields in terms of recruiting papers, commissioning. So what we're trying to do, we're trying to come to our potential partners with the idea of organizing conferences, niche conferences, where we bring the best experts in a particular field, and we can really connect not just our host university with the best experts in the world, but also we can create a lot of networking opportunities between the editors that are publishing this type of research and the experts in the field. So here you can see that we've been working on robotics and telecommunications. There are just some very broad topics that we would like to cover, but I think we're going ahead with green sustainable robotics, which we'll hopefully have in KAUST next year. And also we're going ahead with green telecom. So everything is green again, in line with sustainable development goals, as you can see. So by that, we're trying to really promote the fields and not just bring editors from my journal, but the editors from across the portfolio. Okay, finally, I wanted to mention briefly what we've done in terms of diversity and inclusion. And here we've done quite a bit, I would say. So my journal was involved again with Nature in the project that has been successfully, basically it's up and running because this is a many, many years of project. So it's not going to be just a one-off. It's called Sony Women in Tech Award. And we've been working with Sony, and this year we awarded 3 female researchers with this very nice award. And we're going to continue working with them, obviously, and there will be a big coverage of this event in our pages. And we're also working on creating a specific dedicated community of women in STEM. That will be done with CMJ, so basically a consulting company that is working now with Sony, and we're trying to create some kind of inclusive forum for women where we will not only meet virtually for some meetings, but we will also hopefully conduct some in-person events that will empower women. Maybe we'll have some specific projects. I don't know yet, it's all in discussions right now, but the bottom line is that it's hopefully going to improve our chances of having more female researchers as authors and peer reviewers in the future, because let's be honest, electrical engineering is one of the areas that suffers a lot from the lack of female representatives. We have about 10% maybe at the very, very best. Of course, we try to recruit more female peer reviewers, and we also have about 14% of all our papers published with the corresponding author being a female researcher, which I think is not too bad for electrical engineering. Another thing we're trying to do is to improve regional visibility, and to that end, we're trying to now start this long-term collaboration with the best Korean universities. So we will be publishing for the next 10 months pieces from the best Korean electrical engineering departments. So that will be one project in 2025. We also started publishing pieces on European Chips Act, and we're going to do the same for the US and then for Asia. And this is just kind of to improve the visibility regionally a little bit. And we're also planning to do the same thing for Africa, hopefully in the future. So that's pretty much what I wanted to tell you about the journal. And I really hope that you will have some questions, and I really hope that I will have some answers for you about Nature Reviews Electrical Engineering. So thank you very much. And yeah, I guess we are all open for questions now. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much to Mina, Christine, and Olga. Like Olga said, to our audience, I'll just encourage you all to submit your questions, and you also have the option to upvote any questions you really would like to be addressed. Okay, yeah, so we have around 15 minutes for questions. And to start up, I'll just throw this one out to Mina. How do Nature Reviews editors select topics for new review articles and ensure that they are globally and socially relevant?
Oh, that's a great question. So each editorial team commissions their content, and together as a team, as Olga and Christine mentioned, they travel, they talk extensively to researchers, and this sparks ideas. Oh, maybe we could have a review topic talking about that, or discussing this, or I've seen a bunch of papers on this topic. Maybe we should pull it together and explain what it all means. And the editors have these scientific discussions within their teams all the time. And as a team, they make those decisions like, yeah, that would make a really cool review. And we always push ourselves to like, what's the angle? What would the readers say? Who would be the best author? So it's a very collaborative and creative process of coming up with these ideas, but it absolutely starts in the community where the editors are talking to the researchers who are doing the work.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's see. Can authors submit their own ideas for reviews, and would they need to take the global or social relevance into account too? I'll just
I can
open
take
this
this
up.
one. I can take
Great.
this one. Yes, absolutely. We're always happy to hear ideas from the community. So authors are more than welcome to pitch ideas to us. Of course, as Mina mentioned, we are quite strategic in what we commission. Most of our content is commissioned. That is not to say that we're not happy to assess proposals and look at proposals. If authors submit it to us, we would have, of course, our strategy in mind and the pipeline we already have and the articles we already have in-house or have been commissioned by us. And we would then ask them to sort of convince us by telling us, why is the topic timely? Why now? Why not 2 years ago or in 2 years' time? Why are these authors the best ones to write it? What is their team of co-authors, their expertise? And then we discuss it in the team. It is indeed a creative process. We're trying to understand, is there any unique angle to the topic that we'd like to cover? Perhaps any new research findings have pushed the field to a different direction. Maybe it is an interesting idea. And if we think so, we do go ahead with it, yes.
Awesome. Okay. And let's see. Mina, you talked a little bit about early career researchers. So, how do you select which authors to invite to write a review, and what are the criteria you are looking for? Maybe how that connects to Springer's ECR initiative.
Well, they're sort of related. So the best author for a review is an author who is an expert in the topic, who's particularly passionate about the topic and the angle, who wants to write the paper. So obviously being enthusiastic about a project, which can take months, is always good. But we also think about up and coming researchers. So they may have had like 1 or 2 really key papers, or they've just started their independent lab and they're bringing something fresh to the field. And that can be quite an exciting author to work with. In terms of the ECRs, how we select them, different journals are going through using different strategies to find ECRs. A lot of that is on the ground, talking to them at poster sessions, in conferences, through lab visits, getting recommendations from the more established researchers. And sometimes we do open calls. So we want young researchers to write a tools of the trade. Tell us about the techniques that you're using in your field and how you're using them. Or a journal club, tell us about a paper that inspired you to get onto your own research path. And with that, it's just, well, are you a real person? We just check, do very basic background checks, and we invite them to write.
Awesome. Okay. Great. Looks like we have a question here from Valentinus. What is the most widely researched topic in the sector of biomedical and telecommunications right now? Maybe Christine.
I can do biomedical, not telecommunications. I think it's a very good question, and I don't think there is the one topic, to be honest, thankfully. Otherwise, we would only publish one area. There are several areas, I think, in biomedical engineering that are key at the moment. One is certainly the optimization and development of vaccines. I guess the mRNA vaccines, the COVID vaccines, were one of the biggest bioengineering breakthroughs in the last years and required a lot of engineering. So there is a lot of work now from the biomedical engineering community to get these vaccines working for different diseases and optimize them. That's one key area. Another key area is the engineering of in vitro models as alternatives to animal models for preclinical testing. So researchers, bioengineers are trying to create models in vitro based on patient cells, based on materials that better mimic human physiology and pathophysiology than a mouse can do, both for ethical reasons, but also really for scientific reasons. And the idea is also to get these kind of models into preclinical testing for drug screening, for example. So these could be organoids or organ-on-chips models with microfluidics. I'd say that's another really big area at the moment. And in terms of devices and technology, there is a lot of research going into wearable devices that allow the wearer to remotely monitor their health or their disease. This is in the bigger realm of digital health, really to ensure that we can measure things where they happen at home, remotely. You don't need a needle, you don't need to take blood for this. And that's, from an engineering perspective, very difficult to do because it needs to be something that you can wear that transmits things wirelessly and that can monitor key factors in your body fluids or in your breath, for example, or on your skin. And there's a lot of progress going on. So I could talk about this for a long time now, but I will stop here. But these are just three of the key areas I can think about from the top of my head.
Okay, I think I will just add for telecom, it's not really the field that I cover in my journal, but I guess one of my editors would be a better person to answer this question. But generally speaking, I would say for telecom, of course, 6G is one of the hottest topics right now. And a lot of research in 6G is happening in China, in Huawei, for example. So there's a lot of industrial research that is unfortunately not being disclosed or published, but there is a lot of interest in 6G. Then I think there's a lot of interest in like wireless communication, for example, for sensor networks, robots, like swarm robotics, for example. Then there's next generation optical communications. That's a very hot topic. Green telecom, like I said, that's one of the main topics for the conference we propose is basically how to make sure that, telecommunication networks are sustainable and not harmful, for example, for the well-being and health of, the life and human people beings, basically. That's what else is maybe, generative AI for wireless communications. That is something that is being quite trending quite a bit, I would say. Semantic communications, and probably what is interesting, we just published a paper on underwater communications, which is pretty much a niche maybe if you like, but at the same time there's a lot of research going there, and also space communication. So it's not just air, it can be ground, underwater, so all different types of medium basically that needs to transmit waves wirelessly like this. So that's pretty much what I can think of. If you asked me about electronics, I would tell you much more, but unfortunately you asked about telecom, and that's as much as I can tell you. Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you both. Okay, looks like we have a little over 5 minutes for questions. Let's see. I think this question's for Christine. Is the geographical diversity of authors something that all of the reviews journals actively consider, or just the new launch journals?
That's an excellent question, and we all consider this for sure, because at the end we want to represent the global scientific community or the global industry community, and our readers are global. So we want to have diverse voices heard, and research directions can be different, especially, for example, in biomedical engineering, depending a little bit on where you are around the world. You might have different issues to face in that specific region. So we want to have all of these voices represented in our journal. We do a lot of effort to do this by, as Olga mentioned, right, by traveling, by getting people together, by organizing conferences and roundtables, for us also to learn about the diverse research communities around the globe. And I think this is a principle that every Nature Reviews journal sticks to 100%.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that as much as it is important and we're trying to do our best, very often we're just, limited, because there are many different considerations when we commission papers. And obviously, if we have a choice, we could prioritize certain region if, for example, we have equally good authors. But very, very often regions are just not, represented by the type of researchers that we're looking for as authors. For example, we tried to push Indian region quite a bit, but there's a lot of problem having covering the topics that we are interested in. Or we would like to maybe commission something from African region, but again, there's not enough high level research going on there. So maybe we can compensate slightly by commissioning front half pieces like comments or lab to fabs, for example. But for reviews, I think it's a little bit more difficult, unfortunately, but we're trying our best to diversify as much as possible regionally.
Okay. Let's see, a few minutes left. How do the journals facilitate / promote collaboration between academics and industry professionals?
I think I can take this one because we've been really pushing for it quite a bit. So the way we see it, like I said, is by really trying to establish some kind of a communication channel between industry and academia. And what we found out, at least in the semiconductor industry, is that industry is very much interested in academia doing things that they are not ready to invest into, some risky projects, some more emerging technologies. But academia just doesn't know about this. So our reviews or perspectives that we publish, we use them as a kind of messengers, for industry to send these messages across. And that's exactly what the TSMC perspective is doing. And we are planning to do it in every single industry authored piece. So right now, when they saw a big impact from publishing this type of perspectives and reviews, they said to me that we're going to do it in the future, and we're really hoping to do so. For TSMC, for example, we have 4 reviews in the pipeline already. And this is because they saw the value of translating their needs to academia. And the same thing from academia, I think. If academia is working already with industry somehow, then we can have a very nice balanced reviews and perspectives that would cover both the perspective of more kind of fundamental research and industrial research. And many people just also find kind of these collaborations through our Nature conferences, where we try to invite a lot of people from academia, but also from industry. And we're trying to make sure now that every single time we organize a kind of a nature-led event like this, we are always inviting people from industry. And interestingly, that's what I've seen from my own experience. These people meet and discuss, and they strike some new collaborations, and that's very inspiring, I think, to see. So I've seen quite a lot of very positive examples, and I think that the more of this type of initiatives we kind of, do, the better it's going to become. So it's piece by piece, it's not going to happen overnight, but I think that the more we try, the more we will succeed, globally speaking. So I'm very positive about this direction.
Awesome. Okay. And I think we're in the last minute here, so I'll wrap up and say thanks so much to Mina, Christine, and Olga for taking the time to speak with us today. And thank you to our attendees for your questions and your comments. I'd like to remind our viewers that we did record today's program, so be on the lookout for a follow-up email from Choice and ACRL with a link to the recording and where to access today's slides. Also, if you have a few minutes after the presentation to fill out a brief survey, we would really appreciate it. So thanks again to all of you out there for joining us. We hope you learned something new from the webinar and hope to see you again soon on another session.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks.